Peace and greetings, YouTubers. So, Elijah McClain. As I was getting my thoughts together to make this video, I kind of stopped and I started to think about all of the people that we've covered in relation to those who are victims of police brutality and are no longer here. And I just started thinking about the extremities that surround the killing of so many of these people. I just stopped and I was like, you have the person who was killed in front of their child in the car while they were pretty much sitting because the police officer was afraid. You have the individual who had a broken tail light and they somehow end up dead at the police station. You have the individual who was arrested and was in the back of the car and somehow, while being in cuffs, pulls out a pistol, which somehow made it past the frisking, and was somehow able to manage and cock back that pistol and aim it perfectly to kill himself over a misdemeanor marijuana charge. That's at least what they try to tell us. I started thinking about, those who have stopped to get help and somehow ended up dead by police. And I thought of the children who play at the park and get shot and killed in 2 seconds because of fear. I thought of those who got shot in the back. I thought of those who, it's just story after story, the chokeholds and the knees and getting shot while you're in the bed, whether you were sleeping or whether you were in the bed and you were alerted because somebody broke into your apartment. I'm just like, there's so many extremities. And what's happening is people keep trying to pass this off like, oh, well, these are isolated incidents. These are accidents. And it's like, no, this is policy. This is the norm. And I think society has gotten so used and comfortable with the idea of police always being 100% in the right. You know what I mean? Like literally, an average Joe can be off of the street, go to some training for 6 months, and once they get that badge, all of a sudden they're like the next thing closest to Jesus and they can do no wrong. And they will always be right. And so every single time I started thinking of the reactions that I get when I say my 2 cents on these killings and how normally there's a pattern that happens, right? I released my initial video. Those who are subscribed or whatever, of course, most of the time they're going to kind of align and agree with what I say. And then give it about a week or two when the general public shows up. And then you see all of the people who break their necks to justify what happened. And I recognize and I noticed that a lot of the people who are breaking their necks to justify and make sense of everything and try to always give the benefit of the doubt to the police officer, they tend to fall into that category of people who live and die by all the aspects of America. When you're talking about the ugly side of America, the side of America that pretty much oppresses and marginalizes people, and it's become normalized. And there's so many people who just are comfortable with the idea that a random person who's done some training for 6 months has the authority to kill anybody for any minor inconvenience in which they feel that somebody did not comply or that somebody did not interpret whatever instruction was given to the best of what would have made them satisfied. And that has become so normalized where people always have every answer in the book as to why somebody deserved to die. And it's just sickening. And so as I got into this story, I was just like, the worst part in all of this is even after you've seen all of the home videos and you see the backstory and everything about Elijah McClain, there's still going to be people who are going to try to justify this. And the fact that this killing happened last August and nobody's been fired, nobody's been charged, and I'm just like, wow. I mean, I'm not shocked, but it's just like, goodness, folks, it's like people aren't even trying. You know what I mean? And so I think what's just crazy, what I wanted to do before I get into my 2 cents, I just wanted to read his last words, right? And so if you knew the story, Elijah McClain pretty much had went to the convenience store, got him some candy, was on the way home, had his music on, playing with his little headphones. He also was wearing like some kind of mask. He was anemic, and so of course living in rural Colorado, is not always the nicest place when it comes to warm weather. I don't know what their weather's like in the summer, but he often would wear that because he didn't like to feel cold. In addition to that, he was also on the autism spectrum, so he already just had a very different experience. But in relation, he seemed to be this individual that people seemed to love, and he would go and play music for those in the shelters, and he was a person who really just minded their business and went on their merry way. And so on this specific day, he was walking and, there was a neighbor who called the police because they felt a little suspicious. They said somebody looked suspicious and was walking around with a mask on. And the words that stuck with me when I heard the dispatch call was, I don't know if they're good or they're bad. I don't know if they're good or they're bad. And how many times have we heard the conversation of that whole good guys and bad guys? That's one of the flaws that happens within the society that I guess is America, how people operate. There's always this perception that there are good guys and there's bad guys. And what happens is because of how imaging is portrayed to us, oftentimes anybody who tends to be bad usually looks a certain way. usually has a certain build, usually comes from a certain community, and then it gets enhanced, of course, when you watch television and you watch movies and everything else, and you also just tie it into the history that has been presented to America and the history that we've seen in the past with how black people have been presented to the masses. And so that just kind of stuck with me the whole time, because I kept thinking like, okay, if this was a white person with a mask, was it gonna still be the same conversation of, I don't know if it's a good guy or a bad guy? I kept thinking about that. I'm just like, because it's funny how the perceptions kind of can be validated depending on who's telling the story. Because if I wanted to be really petty, I could say, you know what? I think I'm going to start calling the police on people that I see jogging at 5 a.m. with track shorts on when it's 10-degree weather out here in DC. Because for me, something doesn't add up, especially if they're sweating. They must be on PCP or something. It's so cold. I don't know if they're a good guy or a bad guy. But if I were to make that call and say that, the dispatcher would hang up on me. You know what I mean? You see the difference? And so pretty much it's just like, wow, you see the discrepancies in how everything aligns, especially the fact that this is Aurora, Colorado. The same place where you had the movie theater shooter, right? And so you watch this movie theater shooter go and shoot like 70 people, kill 12 people, live to tell about it, and still get to get their mugshot. And then, by the way, the mugshot had great lighting in the mugshot. I was like, my driver's license don't even got that kind of lighting. And then it's just like, and it seems like he made it there in one piece, not a single bruise. I was like, man, I just knew when they released his initial picture, he was at least going to be stumped out or something. You done killed 12 people and you were still going to kill some more. But, you made it to get to the mugshot and go to trial and everything. You made it there in one piece. Same thing when you talk about the Charleston 9 shooter and how he got to get some Burger King. It's even like when you talk about the kid who, affluenza kid, the kid who literally ran over some people with a car and was told, well, or at least told the judge, hey, I've just grown up so wealthy and so rich, I didn't know responsibility and I didn't understand. And the judge really bought that crap and gave him probation. Just for him to still break probation, escape to Mexico, have the mama also try to back him. I'm just like, you see, there's a discrepancy. You see the foolery that's happening. But what I want to do is I did want to read Elijah's last words. Now, this is what's happening after the police arrive, because the police arrive and they're saying that he didn't comply right off the bat. And my response to that is, well, he had headphones on. He was listening to his music. If he's like anybody who's walking around, enjoying themselves, you might not hear that first command if your music is at a certain level. And I think you also have to have the conversation about people who are on the spectrum often do things in a very routine manner. Okay, especially people who have been mainstreamed. Everything is always about routine. And I'm speaking just on my experience working in the community and having to work with people who come from different experiences, and also having people in my family who also fall into the spectrum. And one thing that was always important was routine. When you disrupt this routine, it can kind of just cause a bunch of anxiety and chaos, especially with one of my relatives. A lot of times, if they started to have an anxiety attack, when it came to that routine, there were only certain people who could bring her back down to, where she could kind of just at least breathe and express how she feels. And it was like, listen, if it wasn't grandma, mom, or the grandpa, or her favorite teacher, nobody else could bring her out of whatever moment she was in, just because that's how it was with routine in regards to her. And so they're saying he didn't comply. So they do the whole police take you down thing. They put him in this chokehold that cuts off circulation of blood to the brain and oxygen and everything like that. The kid even vomits, like he's suffocating. And then what do? They also have the ambulance come. The ambulance comes and gives him ketamine, something to pretty much tranquilize him, pretty much something that's supposed to calm him down. He goes into cardiac arrest and dies. And it's just like, how did we go from some kid walking from a store with some candy and enjoying their music and just trying to get home to somehow they're injected and they're dead? I also would like to know that when it does come to whatever happens in regards to them hopefully charging the police and everything, that paramedic also needs to be charged as well. But anyway, getting to the last words. He says, I can't breathe. I have my ID right here. My name is Elijah McClain. That's my house. I was just going home. I am an introvert. I'm just different. That's all. I'm so sorry. I have no gun. I don't do that stuff. I don't do any fighting. Why are you attacking me? I don't even kill flies. I don't eat meat. But I don't judge people who do eat meat. Forgive me. All I was trying to do was become better. I will do it. I will do anything. Sacrifice my identity. I'll do it. You are phenomenal. You are beautiful and I love you. Try to forgive me. I am a mood Gemini. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ow, that really hurt. You all are very strong. Teamwork makes the dream work. Now at this point he's crying. Okay, I'm sorry. I was trying to do that. I can't breathe correctly. He proceeds to vomit from the pressure on his chest and his neck. And so another conversation that arises, and you've seen people talking about the flaws that happen in policing where when there are people who have a different experience, where they may be on a spectrum, or there may be something different about them in comparison to other people in the masses, it's still the same police officer that shows up. It's still the same kind of force. It's still business as usual. And it's starting to show that, hey, we're running into issues here. Like, who remembers the clip where there was the person who was special needs and they were kind of just having a moment, and so their counselor tried to help them, and then the police were so busy trying to shoot, they ended up shooting the counselor? Like, you see, this is what we're running into, where the police, it's just like, you're killing me. Everything is just always straight to the force. And again, when you have people who are just given guns and there's no training on how to deal and interact with different groups of people, this is what we run into. And this is why people are saying some of that funding that's going to the police departments needs to go into other elements, needs to go into different agencies, needs to go into people that can actually help people, who can meet people where they are. As somebody who works in the community, I've often had to work with children who are on the spectrum. And the biggest lesson that I've learned is that relationships are everything. And also recognizing different signs and recognizing different trigger points. It's not always about, how punitive can I be because this specific individual didn't want to follow directions today. Maybe they had a moment, so they knocked everything off the table. Now my option is, okay, am I supposed to just throw the book at them and they get expelled and suspended for 2 weeks because they didn't listen, because I'm going to hold them to the same standard as somebody else who doesn't see the world the same way, who doesn't operate the same way, who doesn't interpret information the same way. And I'm not saying anything is wrong with how they do it, but they just do it differently than what is the status quo. And so in my lane, it's always been recognizing, okay, how to meet somebody where they are. And how can we address it so we can make sure that all is well? And when we come to this situation again, because oftentimes you will run into another situation, how do we address it so there's not going to be a big blow up? And you don't get that with police, because for police, it's going to be, we don't have that kind of time. It's life or death. Let's get the guns, blah, 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 blah. This is why I think it's important to bring in different agencies and everything else like that can actually come and help. But I also still see the double standard. Because really, when you're talking about this individual, he was 140 pounds. You needed a tranquilizer for somebody who was 140 pounds? And it's all of y'all? And he's apologizing and saying, I'll do what y'all need me to do. I'm sorry, I apologize. He's giving up all power and saying, I'm trying to comply. Meet me where I'm at. He's even letting you know that I'm a little different. I take a minute to do things or respond to what it is that you want. And the police still didn't care. They still got the chokehold. They got everything. And it's just like, you got to be kidding me. Like, there's an issue with that. You're seeing it. And we've just seen too many clips where you see white people run around with a machete chasing the police. They run around with a gun shooting at the police. They fight the police back. They steal cars. They do everything that you pretty much would see on any kind of crazy movie, and they live to tell about it. They get to shoot people and have mass shootings and get taken to the police station in pretty much like some first class, some top tier service. The police are, I just want to make sure the kid was okay. I know he had been through a lot. I know he just killed 9 people, but, at least let him get a meal. You're seeing the discrepancies, especially when it comes to race. And that's what's happening. Like, you recognize that the policing system is just unfair to black folks. And I'm always worried for black people who live in areas where there are small sample sizes of the population. Because it almost seems like things get amplified because the element of fear is there. Because a lot of the people who live in these regions are not used to seeing people who may be different from them, or may not be used to being around enough of a population that doesn't always fit with how they see the world or fit within their same collective as far as race, where they're always nervous. They're always calling the police. Something is suspicious. And this is why you keep seeing these incidents even coming out of the suburbs, where the police are always called on black people who are in certain parts of town or in certain neighborhoods, or who are going to their own house. And people don't think they live there. How many times do we keep seeing these clips of people who are just trying to get into their apartment and somebody calls the police? Somebody's uncomfortable. Like, it's a big giant cycle. I'm just like, it's too much. And I think the worst part is just when I think of just the parents. One of the hardest things I think that happens with people who are raising anybody who is on the spectrum or who has a different experience is that you are so protective of that individual. You are so protected because it's a cruel world out here. You got to deal with people who are going to stare, who are going to talk their trash, who are going to do things, who are going to bother folks, who are going to do whatever it is that they do. I'm speaking from just the experience I've had with people in my family who are on the spectrum or have special needs or have any kind of experience that makes them different from everybody else. And you become so protective because you never want it. You don't want the world to tarnish what it is they have, because a lot of times they have a very innocent view of the world. They see the good in everybody, even though people don't see it in them. And so, you become protective. And for me, I'm just like, man, I just wonder if there was a time period where Elijah used to beg his parents, can I please go to the store? And he used to say, no, it's not safe. And then finally, they're like, okay, you can go ahead. And then, you know, they go in and there's the routine, and they've been making it back and forth safely all the time. And then on this specific day, it just didn't turn out that way, and they get killed. You know, I think there's a hurt that just will never go away. There's a hurt when anybody gets killed, but I think in that aspect, there's a hurt that just, it cuts even deeper because it really just shows the ugly side of the world. And I think what's even worse, and I think I just talked about it in my Terry Crews video, but, you know, even with the protest in response, how there's been these protests where people are just playing violins because he played the violin, he was, you know, he loved music, and you still see the police showing up with the tear gas and trying to break up crowds that literally weren't doing anything, just playing the music, sitting quietly. Because again, when you challenge the status quo, again, that's some people's livelihood for them, and they're willing to stop anything that goes against the status quo, violence and all, doesn't matter. That's the America we're living in, and I think it's some BS, to be honest. And so again, like I said, the policing system, the judicial system, and the prison industrial complex have all got to be gutted, and you got to restructure all of that stuff because it's done wrong. You got too many of the wrong people working in these fields. And again, it's all endorsed and it's backed by policy and politics and money, and it's just all corrupt. It's all some BS. It's ridiculous. Condolences to the family of Elijah and everybody else who's been in that same predicament. It's just, goodness, this is one that really just pissed me off, and I'm scaring myself because I'm a little too calm while I'm talking about this video. So share your 2 cents. I'm out. Subscribe.
They tell me this is life. They shoot away your brother, claim he had a knife. The flashing lights pollute the night, and now the fight for justice. Man, oh, so many tears, and it's still above the law, been for so many years. See, the problem so much greater than a couple of folks. It's a system and a virus that allows them to choke a man to death over minor charges, something so small. When you call it out, it's like you're yelling straight at a wall, cause their ears are closed and they carry no soul, making talking points and statements that allow them to troll, while the ignorant bask in the realm of the mess, then flip up the switch and claim you're so racist. In reality, they're toxic and they feed all the flames, as we add to the growing list with all of those names. Fred, Malcolm, Martin, Medgar, all the heroes, Diana, Mike, Trayvon, their chance at it zero.
I can't stop my jaded. 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 I can't stop my jaded.